Ambassador Kira Chen stood at the observation window of the Galactic Council station. Behind her, the stars stretched out forever like diamonds scattered on black cloth. In front of her, through the thick glass, she could see the massive ships of the Vorthak Empire hanging in space like angry metal insects waiting to strike. The Vorthak had been at war with the Rilani Collective for over 200 years. Both species had lost billions of lives. Entire planets had been burned to ash. Children had grown up never knowing what peace looked like, and now, after all this time, they had agreed to meet. They had agreed because the humans asked them to. Other species thought the humans were crazy. The Vorthak were warriors who lived for battle. The Rilani were cunning and never forgot an enemy. Bringing them together was like putting fire and fuel in the same room and hoping nothing would burn, but the humans had insisted. And for some reason that no one could quite explain, both sides had said yes. "Ambassador Chen," said a voice behind her. She turned to see her assistant, Marcus Webb, walking toward her with a data pad in his hands. His face looked worried, his brow creased with concern. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Kira asked. She kept her voice calm and steady. In her 30 years as a diplomat, she had learned that panic helped no one. Panic made people do stupid things. "The Vorthak delegation just arrived. Their High Commander Zethros is demanding that we remove all Rilani symbols from the meeting room. He says looking at them makes his soldiers want to kill things." Marcus paused and looked at his data pad again. His exact words were that the symbols make his blood burn with the need for battle. Kira nodded slowly, "And let me guess, the Rilani want to keep them up." "Matriarch Silena says removing them would be an insult to their ancestors who died fighting the Vorthak. She says her people's honor demands the symbols stay." Marcus shook his head. "Both sides are ready to walk out before we even start." Kira looked back at the window. The Vorthak ships were joined now by smaller, sleeker vessels. The Rilani had arrived. Two fleets that had spent centuries trying to destroy each other were now floating just kilometers apart. One wrong move, one misunderstood signal, and everything could explode into violence. The peace talks would end before they began, and millions more would die. "Tell both delegations that the meeting room will have no symbols from either side," Kira said at last. "It will have earth flowers instead, sunflowers. They are yellow and make people feel happy." Marcus blinked at her with surprise. "Sunflowers?" "Yes, big, beautiful sunflowers, and tell them the flowers were a gift from my grandmother's garden on Earth. They have sentimental value to me personally. My grandmother grew them for 40 years before she died. If either side complains about the flowers, they are insulting my dead grandmother." A small smile crossed Marcus's face despite his worry. "That is actually clever." "Diplomacy is about finding solutions that nobody loves but everyone can accept," Kira said. "It is also about making it awkward for people to complain. Now, let us go meet our guests." The Vorthak were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters high, with thick gray skin covered in bony plates that looked like natural armor. They had evolved on a harsh world where everything wanted to kill everything else. Violence was in their blood, their history, their culture. To them, fighting was as natural as breathing. High Commander Zethros was the largest of them, his body covered with scars from countless battles. Each scar was a badge of honor, a story of victory. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together, deep and rough. "Human ambassador," he said, looking down at Kira from his great height. "You are small, weak. Your bones look like they would snap like dry twigs. Why should we listen to anything you say?" Kira looked up at him without fear. She had faced many things in her life that were bigger than her. Size was not what mattered. "Because I survived the Mars Rebellion of 2487. Because I negotiated the end of the corporate wars when 6 different factions wanted each other dead. Because I have walked into rooms where everyone wanted me dead, and I walked out with peace treaties signed and sealed." Zethros made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a growl. It was hard to tell with Vorthak. "Words, just words. You humans love your words. The Rilani understand only one thing, power, the power to kill, the power to destroy." "Then let me tell you about power," Kira said, her voice calm but firm. 50 years ago, humans discovered faster-than-light travel. We came out into the galaxy full of hope and excitement. And do you know what we found? We found hundreds of species all fighting each other. The Vorthak against the Rilani, the Kreeth against the Mulgani, the Zin against everyone, war everywhere we looked. "This is the way of things," Zethros said, as if stating an obvious fact. "The strong survive, the weak die. This is nature." "It was the way of things for us too," Kira replied. For thousands of years, humans killed each other. We fought wars over land, over gods, over ideas that seemed important at the time but meant nothing in the end. We invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. We came very close to ending ourselves completely. Zethros leaned forward, suddenly interested, his small dark eyes fixed on her with new attention. Your species has such weapons that can destroy cities. We built them and then we destroyed most of them. Kira's voice was quiet now, touched with old sadness. Because we learned something important. We learned that true strength is not about being able to destroy your enemies. True strength is about being able to stop fighting and start building. True strength is looking at your enemy and choosing not to kill them. This is foolishness, Zethros said, but there was something in his voice now, something uncertain, something that had not been there before. Is it? The human race has not had a major war in over 200 years. We have spread across 30 star systems. Our population is growing. Our children live in peace and learn in schools instead of training for battle. They dream of becoming artists and scientists, not warriors. Kira stepped closer to the massive alien, not afraid of his size or his scars. How many Vorthak children were born this year, High Commander? How many will see their first birthday? How many of your young males are dying right now, on some distant planet, fighting enemies they have never met and do not know? Zethros was silent, his heavy brow furrowed. Your empire is dying, Kira said softly. Not from enemy weapons, but from your own endless war. You cannot sustain this forever. No one can. Every year, fewer children are born. Every year, more young warriors die. What happens when there are none left? Before Zethros could respond, the doors on the other side of the room opened with a soft hiss. The Rilani delegation entered. The Rilani were the opposite of the Vorthak in almost every way. They were small, delicate creatures with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Their bodies were thin and graceful, almost fragile-looking. They looked like they might break if you touched them too hard, but Kira knew that looks could deceive. The Rilani had survived 2 centuries of war against a species twice their size. They had done it through intelligence, through cunning, and through a complete unwillingness to ever give up. Matriarch Silena walked at the front of her group. She was old, her skin faded to a lighter shade of blue, but her eyes were sharp and full of fire. She had led her people through the darkest years of the war. She had buried children and grandchildren. She had seen her home world burn. Ambassador Chen, she said, her voice musical but cold as ice. I must admit surprise. When we received your invitation, we thought it was some kind of trick, some human game we did not understand. No trick, Kira said, just an invitation to talk, nothing more. Talk? Silena looked across the room at the Vorthak delegation, her beautiful face twisted with hatred that went bone deep. What is there to talk about with murderers, with monsters who burned our home world, who killed my children, my grandchildren, my friends? What words could possibly matter? Zethros growled, a deep rumbling sound in his chest. Your people started this war, Rilani. Your assassins killed our first emperor in his own throne room. You struck from the shadows like the cowards you are. Do not speak to us of murder. We defended ourselves against your aggression. Your empire came to our space first. You lie, the histories are clear. Your histories are propaganda. The 2 delegations moved toward each other. Hands reached for weapons that had been left at the door but were not forgotten. The air filled with anger and old pain that had been building for 200 years. Enough. Kira's voice cut through the noise like a blade. It was not loud, but something in it made everyone stop. She stepped between the 2 groups, a small human woman standing between giants and warriors who could have crushed her without effort. You can kill each other later, she said. You have been doing it for 200 years. You are very good at it. But first you will sit down and you will listen to what I have to say. Because I did not come halfway across the galaxy to watch you fight. I came here to offer you something better, something you have both forgotten even exists. What could you possibly offer us? Silena asked, her voice dripping with doubt. Peace, Kira said simply. Real peace, not a pause in fighting, not a temporary agreement, an actual end to this war forever. Both Zethros and Silena stared at her, then they both started laughing. The sound was ugly, filled with bitterness and disbelief. It was the laughter of people who had forgotten how to hope. You are naive human, Zethros said. There can be no peace between us, not after everything that has happened, not after all the blood. There can be no trust, Silena agreed. Too much blood has been spilled, too many graves have been dug, the hatred runs too deep. Kira nodded slowly. Yes, too much blood, too many deaths, too much pain. I know this, I understand this. She walked to the table in the center of the room where a vase of yellow sunflowers sat in the artificial light. She touched one of the petals gently. "Let me tell you a story, a true story from Earth's history. Will you listen?" The room fell quiet as Kira began to speak. Even the most hostile members of both delegations found themselves listening, drawn in by the calm certainty in her voice. Hundreds of years ago, Kira said, there were two nations on Earth called France and Germany. They were neighbors, separated by a small river, and they hated each other. They fought war after war after war. Millions died, cities were destroyed. Children grew up being taught that the other side was evil, that they could never be trusted, that the only good enemy was a dead enemy. She paused, looking from Zethros to Silena and back again. "Does this sound familiar?" Neither answered, but she could see recognition in their eyes. She could see them thinking about their own children, their own teachings, their own hatred passed down through generations. "The last great war between them was the worst," Kira continued. "It spread across the entire world. 60 million people died, 60 million souls gone forever. When it finally ended, everyone expected the same thing to happen again. The winners would punish the losers would grow angry and bitter. In 20 years there would be another war. Everyone knew this would happen." "This is the natural order," Zethros said. "The defeated must be crushed or they will rise again. This is basic strategy." "That is what everyone thought," Kira agreed. "That was the wisdom of the ages, but something different happened, something no one expected. The winners decided not to crush the losers. Instead, they helped them rebuild. They gave them food, money, resources. They sent teachers and doctors. They said, we are not going to be enemies anymore. We are going to be partners." Silena made a sound of disbelief, and the losers accepted this after being defeated, after being humiliated in war. It was not easy. There was anger on both sides. There were people who wanted revenge, who thought the old ways were the only ways. But slowly, over time, things changed. The two nations started working together. They built things together. Their children went to each other's schools and learned each other's languages. They discovered that the people they had been taught to hate were not so different after all. Kira walked around the table, her eyes meeting each alien in turn, making sure they heard her words. Today, France and Germany are the closest of friends. They are part of the same political union. Their people travel freely across the old borders that once divided them. The idea of them going to war again is laughable. No one can even imagine it. The hatred that burned for generations is just a memory in history books. "A pretty story," Zethros said, "but we are not humans. Our peoples are different. Our blood is different." "Are you?" Kira asked. "You both breathe air. You both have children you love. You both dream of a better future. You both are tired of sending your young to die in endless battle. Tell me, High Commander, what makes you so different from any being who wants their children to live?" "How do you know what we dream of?" Silena asked quietly. Kira smiled sadly. "Because I have talked to your people, matriarch, not just the leaders but the common folk, the farmers who grow food that might be destroyed next week, the teachers who educate children who might not live to use their knowledge, the merchants who try to build businesses in a galaxy at war. Do you know what they want? They want the war to end. They want to stop being afraid. They want to grow old and watch their grandchildren play in the sunlight without wondering if today is the day the bombs fall." "The common folk do not understand strategy," Zethros said. "They do not see the bigger picture." "Perhaps the common folk see more clearly than those who have spent their lives swimming in politics and power," Kira replied. "Perhaps they understand something simple that leaders have forgotten. War is not life. War is the absence of life. It is a disease that eats everything it touches until there is nothing left." The room was silent again. Kira could see something shifting in the eyes of both delegations. It was not agreement, not yet, but it was something, a crack in the wall of hatred, a tiny ray of light in the darkness. "I am not asking you to forget what happened," Kira said. "I am not asking you to forgive. Those things must come in time if they come at all. I am only asking you to consider one question. What do you want for your children? More war, more death, or something different?" The dinner was held in a small private room away from the formal meeting spaces. True to her word, Kira had decorated it simply, with more of her grandmother's sunflowers and soft lighting that was comfortable for all three species. The food was carefully chosen by human chefs who had studied both Vorthak and Rilani cuisine for months. Every dish could be safely eaten by all of them. Silena and Zethros sat across from each other with Kira at the head of the table. The distance between them felt like a canyon. For the first few minutes, no one spoke. They ate in tense silence, each watching the other carefully, looking for tricks or traps. Kira decided to break the ice. High Commander, I understand you were once a warrior of great renown even among your own people. Is it true that you defeated the champion of the arena on Vorthax Prime? Zethros looked up from his food. A flicker of pride crossed his scarred face. Yes, I was young then, barely an adult by our standards. The champion was twice my size, a warrior who had never been defeated in 200 matches. Everyone said I would die within minutes. They came to watch my death. What happened? Kira asked. I found a weakness in his left leg, an old injury that had healed badly. He tried to hide it, but I saw it in how he moved. I exploited it, wore him down, made him tired. When he could no longer stand properly, I struck. Zethros paused. It was not a noble victory, some would say, but it was a victory. Impressive, Kira said. Finding weakness is a kind of strength. To her surprise, Silena spoke. We heard of this battle. Our intelligence officers studied recordings of it for years. They said you were resourceful, that you thought like a Rilani, using brain instead of just muscle. Zethros seemed surprised to receive anything resembling a compliment from a Rilani. His brow ridges lifted slightly. He grunted, then said, You're Admiral Threnes, the one who commanded the defense of the Coral Nebula. She was a worthy opponent. We lost many ships to her tactics. Good ships, good warriors. Silena's eyes widened slightly. Threnes was my aunt. She raised me after my mother died. Ah, Zethros paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. She died well, fighting to the end, never surrendering. I respected her. My officers studied her tactics for years afterward. She was one of the finest military minds we ever faced. It was not an apology, it was not forgiveness, but it was something, a recognition of an enemy's honor from one warrior to another, a tiny bridge across the canyon of hatred. Kira let the moment breathe, then she said, Tell me about your homes. What are they like? What do you remember from childhood? Silena's expression softened as she spoke of Rilania, the Rilani home world. The forests there are tall, taller than any building you have ever seen. The trees glow with bioluminescence at night, soft blues and greens and purples. When I was a child, I would lie in the meadows and watch the lights dance. It was like living inside a dream. The air smelled sweet, like flowers blooming forever. My world is different, Zethros said. His voice was rough, but something in it had changed. Harsh, the rock is black and the sky is always gray with storm clouds. The winds can cut through any shelter, but there is beauty in the harshness. The mountains touch the clouds so tall you cannot see their peaks. The rivers are strong enough to carve stone. It makes us strong. It teaches us to survive. All worlds have beauty, Kira said, and all peoples love their homes. This is something we share. This is something all beings share, no matter how different they seem. As the evening went on, something began to change in the room. The conversations were still careful, still guarded, but they were conversations, not arguments. Silena asked about human culture and Kira told her about Earth's art, music, and literature. She spoke of paintings that made people cry and songs that made them dance. Zethros was curious about human military history, and Kira told him about the generals and battles of old, and how humans had eventually decided that the greatest victory was the war that never had to be fought. This concept is strange to me, Zethros admitted. Among my people, the greatest honor is in battle. To die fighting is the highest achievement. What good is honor if no one is left to remember it? Kira asked gently. What good is victory if there is no one left to enjoy it? Zethros was silent for a long moment. I have never thought of it that way, he said finally. By the end of the night, they had not become friends. Perhaps they never would be, but something had shifted. The wall of hatred had cracked a little wider. They could see glimpses of each other through the cracks. As they parted ways at the end of the evening, Silena paused at the door. She turned back to look at Kira with her large, dark eyes. Ambassador Chen, she said, why do you do this? Why do humans care about peace between species you have never met? What do you gain from this? Kira thought about the question for a moment. Because we remember what war cost us, she said finally. We remember what we almost lost. We came so close to destroying ourselves that we could taste the ashes. And we believe that no one should have to learn those lessons the way we did, not if we can help it, not if our words and our work can make a difference. Silena nodded slowly. You are strange creatures, you humans. You have power, but you do not use it to conquer. You have knowledge, but you share it freely. You have survived your own darkness, and instead of becoming bitter, you try to help others escape theirs. Is that so strange? Kira asked. In this galaxy, yes, it is very strange. Every other species we have met seeks advantage. They help only when it benefits them, but you help because you believe it is right. Silena was quiet for a moment, but perhaps strange is what we need. She left without another word, but Kira had seen something in her eyes, something like hope, something that had been dead for a very long time. Zethros lingered a moment longer. Human, he said, I do not understand you. You have no warriors, no armies ready to conquer, yet you walk among the most dangerous species in the galaxy without fear. Why? Kira smiled. We have warriors, High Commander. We simply use them differently now. They build instead of destroy, they protect instead of attack, and as for fear, she looked up at the massive alien without flinching. Fear is a choice. I choose not to be afraid. I choose to believe that every being, no matter how different, is capable of change. I choose to believe that peace is possible. And if you are wrong, what if we cannot change? Then I will die trying to prove that I am right. There are worse ways to spend a life than fighting for peace. Zethros stared at her for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. You are either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador Chen. Perhaps I am both, Kira said. Most diplomats are. The formal negotiations began the next morning in the same room where they had first met, now free of any symbols except the yellow sunflowers that had become a quiet presence throughout the station. They were difficult, contentious, and exhausting from the very first hour. 200 years of war could not be undone in a single day or even a single week. Every issue was a battle. Every word was weighed and measured. Both sides came to the table with lists of demands and grievances that stretched back generations. There were shouting matches that shook the walls. There were walkouts where one side or the other stormed from the room, swearing never to return. There were moments where everything seemed about to collapse into violence. But Kira was always there, patient and persistent. She found compromises where none seemed to exist. She built bridges across chasms of hatred. She reminded both sides of what they stood to gain and what they had to lose. The first agreement was small, a ceasefire in 3 contested systems to allow for the evacuation of wounded soldiers on both sides. It was not much, but it was something. It was proof that agreement was possible. From there, other agreements followed, each one a small victory. Prisoner exchanges that returned thousands of captives to their families. The return of war dead for proper burial according to each species' customs. The establishment of neutral zones where relief supplies could be delivered to civilians caught in the crossfire. Each agreement required days of negotiation. Each one felt like moving a mountain with bare hands, but slowly the mountains moved. 3 months into the negotiations, something unexpected happened. A Vorthak patrol ship was attacked by pirates in neutral space. The pirates were not Rilani, they were Kreeth raiders, a third party of opportunists taking advantage of the chaos of war. The Vorthak ship was badly damaged, its hull torn open, its crew dying in the cold darkness of space. A Rilani ship was nearby, close enough to help. Under normal circumstances, they would have watched the Vorthak die, or perhaps they would have finished them off themselves, making the pirates' job easier, but these were not normal circumstances. The Rilani captain, a young officer named Talon, faced a choice that would have been unthinkable a year ago. He looked at the damaged Vorthak ship on his sensors. He looked at his crew who waited for his orders, and he made a decision. He sent his ship to help the Vorthak. His crew boarded the damaged vessel and rescued the survivors, pulling them from burning compartments and sealing breaches in the hull. They even fought off the pirates together, Rilani and Vorthak standing side by side for the first time in living memory. Rilani medics treated Vorthak wounded. Vorthak warriors defended Rilani engineers. They worked together as if they had been doing it all their lives. When news of the incident reached the negotiation table, both delegations were stunned into silence. Zethros looked at the report with something like wonder. This Rilani captain, he said slowly, he risked his ship, his crew, for our people, for Vorthak he had never met. He did what any honorable warrior would do, Silena said, but there was something in her voice, pride perhaps, or surprise at finding pride in such an unexpected place. This is what peace looks like, Kira said quietly. This is what becomes possible when you stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other as people. That night, for the first time in recorded history, a Vorthak raised a glass in toast to a Rilani, and a Rilani raised her glass in return. They did not speak. They did not need to. Something had changed between them that words could not capture. Captain Talon and the Vorthak commander he had rescued were brought to the station. They stood before both delegations and told their story. The Vorthak commander, a grizzled veteran named Krothos, spoke of how he had expected to die in the cold of space, killed by pirates or left to freeze by the Rilani. Instead, he had been saved. He had been treated with honor and respect by beings he had spent his whole life hating. "I do not understand it," Krathos said, his voice rough with emotion, "but I am grateful. This R'Lani gave me my life. He gave me the chance to see my children again. This is a debt I cannot repay." Talon stepped forward. He was young, barely an adult by R'Lani standards, but his eyes were clear and certain. "I did not save you because of politics," he said. "I saved you because it was right, because when I looked at your ship I did not see enemies. I saw people who were dying, and I could not let that happen, not if I could stop it." The room was silent. Then slowly Zethros rose from his seat. He walked across the room to where Talon stood, his massive form towering over the small R'Lani. Everyone tensed, expecting violence. Instead, Zethros bowed his head. It was the Vorthak gesture of deepest respect, reserved only for the greatest of warriors. "You have honor," he said, "true honor, the kind that cannot be taught or bought. I name you friend of the Vorthak, young captain. May your ancestors smile upon you." From across the room, Silena watched with tears in her eyes. "This," she whispered to Kira, "this is what you were talking about. This is what you meant." "Yes," Kira said, "this is what I meant. This is what becomes possible." The negotiations continued with new energy. Where there had been suspicion, there was now the beginning of trust. Where there had been hatred, there was now something softer. Not friendship, not yet, but the possibility of friendship. The final treaty was signed 6 months after the negotiations began. It was called the Sunflower Accords, named after the flowers that had become a symbol of the peace process. News of the name spread across the galaxy, and soon everyone knew what it meant. Sunflowers were no longer just earth plants, they were symbols of hope. The terms of the treaty were complex, addressing everything from borders to reparations to cultural exchange programs. Teams of diplomats had worked day and night to craft language that both sides could accept. But at its heart, the treaty was simple. The war was over. After 200 years of blood and fire and death, the Vorthak and the R'Lani were at peace. The signing ceremony was held in the same room where the negotiations had begun, now filled with representatives from both sides and observers from dozens of other species. The yellow sunflowers stood in vases throughout the room, their bright faces turned toward the lights. When Silena and Zethros signed their names to the document, the room erupted in applause. Even the most cynical observers, those who had predicted failure from the beginning, had to admit that something remarkable had happened. Something that many had said was impossible. But for Kira Chen, the most meaningful moment came afterward, away from the cameras and the crowds, in a quiet corner of the station where no one was watching. Silena and Zethros approached her together. They walked side by side, an image that would have been unthinkable half a year ago, an image that would have gotten both of them killed by their own people just months before. "Ambassador Chen," Silena said, "we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have given us something we had forgotten could exist." "You owe me nothing," Kira replied. "You did the hard work. You made the choice to try something different. I just opened the door. You walked through it." "But you showed us it was possible," Zethros said. "You believed in peace when no one else did, even when we did not believe in it ourselves. You believed for us until we could believe again." Kira shook her head. "I believe in people, all people, even ones who have forgotten how to believe in themselves." Silena reached out and took Kira's hand. Her blue fingers were cool against Kira's warm skin. In R'Lani culture, when someone saves your life, they become part of your family forever. You are family now, Ambassador Chen. You will always have a home among us. Our doors will always be open to you. Zethros nodded his massive head. "Among the Vorthak as well, you have the heart of a warrior human, not the heart of one who fights, but the heart of one who refuses to give up. We would be honored to call you friend." Kira felt tears prick her eyes. In 30 years of diplomacy, she had received many honors, many medals, many accolades. Leaders had praised her. History books would remember her. But nothing had ever meant as much as this simple gesture of acceptance from two beings who had been taught their whole lives to hate each other. "Thank you," she said, "both of you. This is why I do what I do, not for treaties or titles or my name in history books, but for moments like this, for the proof that change is possible, that the future does not have to be like the past, that we can choose to be better." As she prepared to leave the station, Kira looked out the window one last time. The Vorthak and R'Lani fleets were still there, but they were no longer facing each other like enemies preparing to strike. They were moving together now, forming up for the journey home. Side by side, their ships mixed together in a formation that had never existed before. She thought about all the people on those ships, Vorthak warriors who had expected to die fighting the Rilani officers who had grown up learning to hate, all of them going home to tell their families that the war was over, that peace had come at last. She thought about the children who would be born into this new peace, children who would never know what it was like to live in constant fear of attack, children who would grow up learning about the war in history classes, not living it. They would read about the hatred and the killing and wonder how it could have gone on for so long. They would not understand how their ancestors could have hated so deeply. That was good. That was exactly how it should be. The children of tomorrow should not understand the hatreds of yesterday. They should find them strange and foreign and sad. That was progress. That was hope. A year later, Ambassador Kira Chen was back on Earth, tending the garden she had inherited from her grandmother. The sunflowers were in full bloom, their bright yellow faces turned toward the sun, drinking in the light. She had planted extra this year, using seeds from the flowers that had witnessed the signing of the Sunflower Accords. Those seeds were special now. They carried history in them. The garden was quiet except for the buzz of bees and the distant sound of birds singing. Earth was beautiful in the summer, all green and gold and blue. After months in space stations and alien worlds, it felt good to have her hands in the dirt, to smell the flowers, to feel the sun on her face. Her assistant, Marcus Webb, found her there, knee-deep in soil, a peaceful smile on her face. "Ambassador," he said, "sorry to disturb you." Kira looked up from her gardening. There was dirt on her cheek and leaves in her hair. She had never looked happier. "What is it, Marcus?" "We just received word from the Galactic Council. The Kreeth and the Mulgani are at each other's throats again. Border disputes have turned into shooting incidents. The Council is requesting your assistance before it becomes another full-scale war." Kira sighed, but it was not a sigh of exhaustion or despair. It was the sigh of someone who had found their purpose and was ready to continue the work, no matter how long it took. Another war brewing. Not yet, but it could become one if someone doesn't intervene soon. The Mulgani ambassador specifically asked for you. He said you're the only diplomat in the galaxy that both sides might actually listen to. Kira smiled at that. "Pack my things," she said, "and bring some seeds from the garden, marigolds this time, I think, something bright and orange." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Do you really think flowers will help with the Kreeth and Mulgani? They're even more hostile than the Vorthak and Rilani were." "I think everything helps," Kira said. "Every small gesture, every moment of beauty, every act of kindness. Peace is not something you achieve once and then forget about. It is something you build every day, one flower at a time, one conversation at a time, one choice at a time." She stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands. Above her, the sun was shining bright and the galaxy was waiting. There was work to be done. There was always work to be done. "Come on," she said, "let's go remind some people that there's a better way to live." As they walked away from the garden, Marcus asked, "Ambassador, do you ever get tired of it, always having to convince people not to kill each other?" Kira thought about the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like trying to hold back the ocean with my hands, but then I remember the Vorthak child I saw playing with a Rilani child on the station last month. They had no idea their peoples were supposed to hate each other. They were just children playing together, laughing together, and I remember why I do this. For the children. For everyone, for the people alive now and the people who will be born tomorrow. For the galaxy we could build if we just stopped fighting long enough to try." She paused at the gate of the garden and looked back at the sunflowers one more time. "My grandmother used to say that hope is like a seed. It looks small and insignificant, but given the right conditions, it can grow into something beautiful, something that produces more seeds, which grow into more flowers, which produce more seeds." "That's what we're doing, Marcus. We're planting seeds." 3 months later, the Kreeth and Mulgani signed their own peace treaty. They called it the Marigold Agreement. Orange flowers became the new symbol of hope in their region of space. And somewhere in a corner of the universe that had known only war for centuries, a Vorthak grandmother was teaching her grandchildren a new song. It was a Rilani lullaby, one that matriarch Silena had taught her during a cultural exchange visit. The children did not know it was supposed to be an enemy's song. They only knew it was beautiful. That was what peace looked like, not the grand treaties or the diplomatic ceremonies, but the small moments. The songs shared, the games played, the friendships formed between people who were supposed to hate each other. The humans had known this for a long time. They had learned it the hard way through centuries of war and suffering, and now they were teaching it to the galaxy, one flower at a time, one song at a time, one peace treaty at a time. Other species had asked them why they bothered, why they spent so much energy on peace when they could have used their resources to build armies and conquer. The humans always gave the same answer. Because peace is possible, because everyone deserves a chance at something better, because we believe in people, even when they have forgotten how to believe in themselves. The galaxy was starting to understand. Slowly, painfully, species by species, world by world, they were starting to understand. Terran diplomats were dangerous, not because they had weapons or armies, not because they were clever or cunning, but because they actually believed in peace for everyone, and belief, as it turned out, was the most powerful force in the universe. It could move mountains, it could end wars, it could change the course of history. All it took was someone brave enough to believe first.